Hello everybody and welcome to my roundup of today's World Championship match. First game between, of course, reigning world champ Magnus Carlsen and the challenger Vishy Anand. It was a very important game for many reasons. Of course, the start of world champion, both players are a bit nervous. They seemed a lot less nervous compared to last year though, I must say. And it was interesting to see how Vishy with the white pieces was going to set the tone and really show what he had prepared and the kind of mood he was in. And I think we were all very pleased when Vishy decided to play the move 1d4. We saw last year how in Chennai he got absolutely nothing out of the opening against Carlsen's Berlin. So I think Magnus was very much expecting Vishy to play d4. And after knight f6, c4, instead of e6, which is the move that Magnus has been playing most frequently in tournaments, super tournaments, he played the move g6. And after knight c3, he didn't play a King's Indian, but went for the Grunfeld with d5. So clearly has worked very hard on this opening as a potential weapon against Vishy. I don't know how much Vishy would have expected this. I don't think Magnus has played the Grunfeld at all much recently. So a good choice by him. Him and his seconds obviously worked very hard. And after takes, it was actually Vishy who came up with the first interesting moment in this opening, playing bishop d2. It's a fashionable move. The point of bishop d2 is that if black ever takes, you just take back with the bishop now. So after bishop d2, bishop g7, e4, once you take, the point is you can take on c3 with the bishop. Black castles and queen d2. This has all been seen lots of times before. Normally here black plays c5, and after d5 it's a real mess, but you would really put your money on Vishy for having this really worked out quite extensively compared to Magnus. So Magnus's move knight c6, the first kind of offbeat move in this line, was a good choice practically, I think, because it's likely Vishy studied this less. Knight c6, knight f3 is logical, and of course he brings the bishop out with bishop g4. And now we reach a position after d5 takes on f3 where Vishy introduced the move bishop takes g7. Not g takes f3 as had been previously played, but bishop takes g7 first. And the point is that after king takes g takes f3, we reach this position where black has managed to somehow compromise the white pawns on the king's side, but at the same time he's got a big problem with this knight on c6, because after knight e5, in fact, and now castles, we can see that white's next move is going to be queen c3, and it could be quite tricky to get out of that pin. Anyway, this is a critical moment where Magnus spent about 20 minutes there or thereabouts on his move, and he came up with the move c6. Which also prompted Vishy to then speak for 20 minutes or so. And quite surprising for many commentators online on the various forums saying, well, hey, if you play castles long so quickly, surely you should have c6, which is a natural move, trying to break down this centre, give some space of black pieces. Surely you should have that worked out. Anyway, he went for queen c3 in the end, f6 only move, and bishop h3. This is a very important move because it controls the c8 square, which a rook would love to get to, and also e6, which is a potential outpost. There was an exchange on d5, and now Carlsen showed his understanding of these kind of positions with the move knight f7. That's actually a very good move. The knight was going to get hit with f4. Well, actually, white played f4 anyway, and came back. So now it's his move. He played queen d6, vacating a square for the rook, attacking the pawn. Vishy very wisely protected that pawn on f4. We had a rook move to the centre, rook a d8, and now bishop e6. So kind of around here, if you had to assess the position, I think white has got a slight advantage. Of course, what he'd love to do is really march this guy up the board, or even get a rook to the centre, pressurise this weak e7 pawn. But that's a way off, and black is reasonably well coordinated at the moment. Queen b6, hoping for a trade of queens, would be his idea. Something like queen takes b6, a takes b6, rook he1 and rook d6, with the idea of knight d8 would be some kind of success for Magnus. So he kept the queens on, rightly so, I think. Rook d6 anyway, rook he1, and again knight d8. So It seems as though Magnus has played very precisely around here. And after f5, a lot of people criticise this move, but I don't think it's too bad, although clearly White's advantage has now disappeared. Maybe White should consider bringing this guy back, but it didn't really feel like much. After f5, well, Magnus snapped off that bishop, rook takes, and then played queen c7 check, king b1, and rook c8. So now he's potentially threatening moves like rook takes d5. White has got a weak king. So Vishy wisely played rook d1, rook takes rook, and rook takes rook. And here another very normal move, rook to d8, queen to e3, and rook to d7, just covering this weak e7 pawn. There's no more firepower now against that pawn. So around here I think it's about dynamic equality. Vishy though decides to I would say clarify the situation with the move d6. Forcing pawn takes pawn, and now his idea is queen d4. It's not a pawn sacrifice. He's now hitting f6. You have to block that, and now you take, and take back on d6. So material is equal. But it's quite clear that if anybody has come out better here, it's black. He's managed to iron out his structure. He really has no weaknesses that he can't defend at the moment. And it's White's king that is probably a bit more unsafe. a6 played, a3, and now queen a5. So just probing, this is a good move, queen a5, because now the queen can probe along all these diagonals. Well, f4 was played, there was a queen h5, queen d2, the queen came back, queen c4, rook d7, queen c6, a bit of manoeuvring around. But it looks as though already around here, after rook e7, Magnus is just, his queen is better placed, he's got less weaknesses in his position, maybe nominally better, but probably nothing more than that. Queen c1, and now a5. That's a good move. Vishy started to get worried around here, he said in the press conference. Letting this pawn come to a4, for a moment he thought, well, maybe this is going to really cause me problems, because now this king is boxed in. But he was very happy to have found this move 42, rook to d4. This was a very important defensive mechanism, because the rook now comes to b4, and it covers this b3 and c4 squares whilst maintaining an attack here, and this king is never totally out of danger. So after rook d4, rook e2, he swung to b4, protecting b2, and now b5. You can't take this off because of queen c4 check winning, so b5, and now another very accurate move from Vishy, queen h1, which basically secures the draw, because after rook e7, queen d5, he's managed to centralize his queen, rook e1 threatening mate, but now this leads to a false perpetual check, like so. So not the most exciting game ever seen at a World Championship final, however a good game from both sides in various respects. I think they'll both be reasonably relieved, perhaps Vishy that he didn't lose the first one, and also Magnus of course. Things have really yet to get started in this World Championship, a lot of games to go. Next game is tomorrow. I'll be doing my daily recap of that for you guys. Hope you've enjoyed this, and of course check out all of the other content we have here on Chess24. Take care.